What's up? What's up? Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to each and every one of you. Going to do some reaction analysis here. Got my notepad here with me. Going to kind of be taking some notes on this interview that John did with Megyn Kelly. Just to kind of see what, and I might actually stop it here and again. I probably won't hold the video for it, but I'll stop it every now and again to maybe do some analysis and stuff like that. And if the urge is too great, to do some fact checking on some of the things that John said. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we go, I want to say thank you to Trace. Once again, huge shout out to Trace for supporting the content, supporting this next video. Much love. Appreciate you for doing that. You know, we always got to give a hug. Appreciate you so much for supporting the content. And without further ado, let's jump right into it. This is going to be the Megyn Kelly video. It's about an hour and 30 minutes, so I might chop it up just depending on where I start and stop. So here we go.
Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Today on the program, we are speaking with John Ramsey, the father of little JonBenet Ramsey. JonBenet's murder remains one of the most covered stories of the 20th and 21st centuries. Yet despite decades of intense media attention, police investigations, and over 20,000 tips in this case, we still don't know the person or persons responsible for her death. But there are several new developments in the case, and John is here to walk us through what they are and whether he believes they could lead to finding his daughter's killer after all these years. First, a reminder of how this story began. It was Christmas night, 1996, Boulder, Colorado.
I'm interested. I'm already on edge because I'm interested to see what these new developments are. It better not be old stuff that we already knew about and you're just trying to kick it up again as if we didn't know about it. And you actually knew about it too.
The Ramsey home was decorated with holiday wreaths tied with bows. John and his now late wife, Patsy Ramsey, had put 6-year-old JonBenet to bed after returning home from a Christmas dinner with friends. When Patsy woke up early the next morning and went downstairs, she found a ransom note at the bottom of the steps. It read in part, "We have your daughter in our possession." Patsy ran to JonBenet's room, she would later tell authorities, but she was nowhere to be found. Patsy called 911. Her voice was hysterical, begging for police to come as soon as possible. At the end of the call, you can hear Patsy praying and pleading, "Help me, Jesus, help me."
There's a ransom note here. It's a ransom note? It says HCC. Victory. Please. Okay, what's your name? Are you Patsy Ramsey? Oh my God. Please. I'm sending an officer over, okay? Do you know how long she's been gone? Please, we just got out. Is she right here? Oh my God, please. Okay, well, I am, honey. Take a deep breath, okay? Patsy?
I'll be honest with you. Listening to it again, it just sounds like she's breathing heavy. That's it. It doesn't even sound frantic at this point. It sounds like she's breathing heavy. Like if you make yourself like breathe heavy, that's almost what it sounds like.
Patsy? Patsy?
You couldn't hear it as well there, but she is on there saying, "Help me, Jesus, help me, Jesus." Mm-hmm. Oh, hours later, their little girl's body was found in the basement of their home, not by police, but by John, who was sent around by the detective who was there saying, "Go look for any belongings of hers that may be out of place." And he found his own child. John.
Oh, he found some belongings, all right, out of place. He found a full body that was out of place because that body should not be here. That body should be outside of this house because it was a kidnapper.
JonBenet had been strangled and left for dead on a concrete floor. Police focused their investigation almost solely on John and Patsy.
A concrete floor in which left no residue
believing there was no way an intruder was responsible. Why? That's one of the big questions here. Why did they believe that? Because there's a lot of evidence suggesting the opposite. They believed the parents did it. Case pretty much closed in their eyes. It would take years before DNA evidence would clear them in 2008. But Patsy would never live to see that day. She died of ovarian cancer 2 years earlier, 10 years after the death of her little 6-year-old. Oh, so tragic.
Right.
To this day, John's hope is that this case will be solved. And that hope remains in the hands of the same police department that pointed the finger at him wrongly. Imagine buying an Italian sports car or your dream house for less than $1 a day. Well, now you can own an X chair. That's the office chair I personally use, and arguably the finest office chair in the world, for only $20 a month. That is less than $1 a day. And for that, you can own something that is going to make the hours spent at your desk 1,000 times more comfortable, more productive.
She said wrongly with so much conviction, as if, see, this is why I say, man, you got to dig into the information. Because without digging into the information, people can just tell you anything. And when you listen to what people say, when they say it's wrong, you will find, and this is no disrespect to people, so let me watch how I word this. You will find that their knowledge of the case is limited to what they've been told by the Ramseys. I'm not saying you're wrong to believe that. What I'm saying is, once you critically examine the evidence, it might shock you. And you might be looking at it and you might say, I like these people. They're nice people. If they, if we hung out, I'm pretty sure that I would like them. But something's not right. Something just doesn't look right. So here we have, as we did with this is common. This is common. Mary Lacey and D.A. Hunter and Lou Smith and Megyn Kelly and Dan Abrams and all these people. It's like, oh, I can't believe it. The evidence, it's a preponderance of the evidence. What evidence are you looking at?
More enjoyable. Not only do I love my X chair, but Abby's got one too. She loves hers just as much. From the moment I first sat down in my X chair, I immediately felt the difference. Truly, it's incredibly comfortable. And it's got all sorts of fun features that your normal chair does not have. You're running around freezing this time of day. All for less than $1 a day.
Sorry.
John Ramsey is here today. John, thank
I ain't trying to hate on Megyn trying to get her coin.
you so much for being with us.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, I've been following you for so many years, following the case and seeing so many of your interviews, and you've handled it with such dignity. I appreciate the fact that here we are 25 years later and you're still trying to keep interest on the case and try to call attention to what you think to solve it. And there's breaking news, I should say, about the detectives involved in your case. That's extraordinary. Yeah. The very guy who interviewed you and Patsy, who you've been kind of complaining about, like he didn't follow up on leads, he didn't do this, he didn't do that. There's news about him today. I assume you've heard what's happened to him.
Yes. Yeah, there was a big step forward, I think, in this case because he was a roadblock. When he was assigned to this case 26 years ago, he was at that time a auto theft investigator, and now he's put on the investigation of a murder of a child. And I've never criticized the Boulder police for not knowing what they're doing or not having any experience. They didn't even have a homicide department. But I have criticized them over the years, and for the reason that they would not accept help from those who offered it. And lots of help was offered. Right in the beginning, the Denver police offered to put 2 experienced homicide detectives on Boulder staff at Denver's expense for as long as they needed them. Boulder said, no, we don't need that. We've got this under control. that's been going on for 26 years, and we've just kind of had it. It's time to do something different, put some people in charge that know what they're doing. And
Mind you, Denver had solved homicide, or I'm sorry, Boulder had solved homicide. So, car mechanic, auto theft, whatever you want to call it, with those people, they had closed the book on 13 of the 16 homicides that they had looked into. They had closed the book, they had found the suspect, and it was Alex Hunter who was being criticized and being called for his job and being told he needed a special prosecutor in the case. So, and John has, criticized the police before. I'm not going to waste my time going back and finding it, but I believe that John has criticized the police before for being incompetent, saying, how can you blame them? These other people don't know what they're doing. I think Patsy was saying that. How can you blame them? These other people don't know what they're doing, so on and so forth. But he has been vocal as well as saying that they didn't accept help, which we know has been dispelled. Anyways.
Be willing to put their ego and arrogance aside and accept help.
Yeah. The detective's name was Tom Trujillo. He was one of the lead investigators in JonBenét's case.
That's who I thought he was talking about, because Tom stayed on the case for quite some time.
He just received an involuntary transfer to another division where he's going to be working the midnight shift, not a promotion, in addition to a 3-day suspension. And they've basically said that he and another were not appropriately investigating several cases. They said JonBenét's case was not one of them. These are the cases that he's being accused of, half-assing it on. Were not homicide cases. But he is being accused of not doing his job and not following through on leads and so on and other significant investigations. Do you feel, validated at all by that?
Well, in a way, yes. We've known that he's been a problem and not really capable of thinking out of the box, and more importantly, his arrogance, I guess, and ego prevented anybody from coming in to help. Our system, the way it's set up, is kind of crazy, but there's 18,000 police jurisdictions in this country. Each one's a little island of authority. And if crime happens on that island, it's up to the local police to deal with it. With the exception of a few things like bank robberies, nobody can come in and help them unless they're invited. And that's a real crazy system, because there's tons of qualified help that could have come in, wanted to come in, right, but unless they were invited and asked to come in to help, they can't. And it's been a huge frustration. And that's really what I'm very critical of the police department on that issue.
Of course, because you see the bigger cities tend to have a higher homicide rate, and thus more experienced homicide detectives and people who know how to preserve a crime scene and, preserve evidence. And that's the problem. That was one of the major problems right from the get-go with this, which let's take a step back now and talk and set up the crime so that people have a better feeling for what they did and didn't do, and why you really kind of want this case wrested from them right now. It's been 26 years. It's kind of time. There should be a statute of limitations for the police. If they haven't solved it, they should be able to be compelled to give the evidence to the family or to somebody else who might be able to have a go at it. But we'll get to that.
Exactly.
So let's go back. Let's go back to December 26, 1996. You were living in Boulder, Colorado.
This article is in the Independent. JonBenet Ramsey, detective among 5 Boulder police officers disciplined for failing to investigate cases. The part you're looking for is probably right here. A former lead detective on the JonBenet Ramsey murder case and head of the investigation unit has been reassigned to patrol by the Boulder Police Department after internal audit revealed some cases had not been investigated between 2019 and this year. Commander Thomas Trujillo is no longer involved in any investigations, including the JonBenet Ramsey case. Spokesperson told the independent 36-year-old veteran, or the 36-year veteran of the department, received a 3-day suspension without pay, placed on performance improvement plan. Department said in Thursday night's release, action was taken against him and 4 other officers after after a case management system review ordered by Police Chief Maris Harold. It's probably a kind of a newer technology, who took over the department 2 years ago, after building her law enforcement career in Cincinnati. While upgrading data and transitioning to a new open data portal, department officials became aware of cases assigned to a particular detective that had not been investigated or investigated fully between 2019 and the present. The department release stated, upon discovery of this issue in July of 2022, police chief immediately brought it to the attention of Professional Standards Unit and the independent police monitor, with allegations of several different rule and policy violations made against 5 officers. Now, they were saying that they found this between 2019 and 2019 and this year, and this was written or published in 2022. So between 2019 and 2022, they come up with this case management system. And I'll move this back over here. They come up with this case management system that they assign. Now, what could have happened, and I'm not, there is an article on February 11th by the Boulder Daily Camera, February 11th of 2024, where Thomas Trujillo retires. Boulder Police Commander is the headline. Boulder Police Commander Thomas Trujillo retires after 38 years. And so that's 2 years after being placed on the patrol. And apparently, so what might have been the issue is sometimes when you're a little bit older and you're working, and because I've seen it with my own 2 eyes, sometimes, you get people that come in and they're new and they're hot shots and they're managers and stuff like that. And, they're coming in with all this flashy new technology. And it sounds like that data system. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong for the data system or the system to have been implemented, because, with changing times, changing technology, we're going to assign this case to you, and it's going to show all of the little updates that you're doing in the case to know that you're completing your work. And because, you want to know that you're staying on top of it. But to a veteran like that, that might seem like micromanagement, and I think sometimes in management, when you're a manager of that, when you're a manager like that, because you came from Cincinnati, and this can happen with anybody. Like I said, I've seen this before. You come in and you want to implement all these rules on some of these veterans, and they just kind of reject it because it's not, they're like, why do I need to be doing this? Are you saying that you need to babysit me doing my job? And it's very offensive to them. It's extremely offensive to them, and they don't take to it too well. And so obviously probably the conversation between them with Detective or Commander Trujillo was like, all right, I'd rather be outside than to be, kind of, put under somebody's thumb, is what I'm suspecting happened. So yes, we can mention Tom Trujillo, but in the context of JonBenet Ramsey's case, I don't think it applies, but I mean, it could.
With Patsy, your wife, with little JonBenet, who was 6. You had a son too, Burke, at the time, who was 10. And things are going well for you. You were a successful business executive. Was Patsy a stay-at-home wife?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
She's very devoted.
She was taking care of the children.
Kids.
Okay, very devoted mom. We've seen the videos of her. She seemed like a very loving mother. And you just celebrated Christmas Day. Was there anything out of the ordinary on that day, Christmas Day?
No, it was a very normal day. We had gotten up early, of course, and had made a breakfast, and then all day long, kids were in and out of the house with their friends, coming and going and playing with new toys, and very normal Christmas Day for us.
So you went out over to a friend's house to eat Christmas evening dinner, the dinner on the 25th with the kids?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So you go over
They
there
had-
and you go ahead.
Well, I say the friends we visited have kids our age, our kids' age, and so that they were buddies, and it was a logical place to have a family get together.
So what time did you get home from that dinner?
Well, I think if I recall, it was about 9:30.
I've mentioned this before when we talk about John giving us information we didn't ask for. He cut Megyn Kelly off, or not cut her off, but he in sort of impeded what she was about to say in order to say something that we honestly don't care about. Oh, it logically happened because who cares? Everybody has friends, with kids and that. That's what I'm saying. This is not what we want to know. John is telling us stuff that we don't want to know. I don't care if it's a logical friendship and you guys had kids the same age. We assume that for whatever reason that you guys are friends and you both have kids. Oh, great. Yeah, we are friends. And at 25, 30 years, we got it. We know the story. We know Fleet had kids. You had kids. We know Fleet was a gas and oil executive. We know Priscilla had some sort of philanthropy background, I believe, if I remember it correctly, and then came over, and her and Patsy it kind of went into a little bit. I call it a little bit of philanthropy and like volunteering. So we know all that. Irrelevant.
JonBenet had fallen asleep on the way home, and it was only maybe 6 blocks, but she was tired. She'd been up all day and having fun and playing. And so I carried her upstairs and put her on her bed. And then Patsy came up and got her ready for bed and tucked her in.
So Patsy put on JonBenet's pajamas that night, and this would later become an issue, what she was wearing. What did Patsy put JonBenet in?
I don't remember, quite frankly. I'd have to look at the pictures, but it was just night clothes.
But my understanding, the reason I ask you, John, is that in reading up in the case, that there was an allegation that Patsy said she put her in a red outfit, like red PJs, and when she was found, she was in white. Is that familiar to you?
Yeah,
may or may not.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the red nightgown. I hadn't never heard that, but when I found her, she had on like a black and white pants and top.
Okay. So Patsy puts her in bed. So probably by 10 o'clock, JonBenet was in her bed. So Patsy.
White pants and nightgown. I hadn't never heard that, but when I found her, she had on like a black and white pants and top.
Okay. So Patsy puts her in bed. So probably.
He said black and white. Now, I thought it was pretty clear that when JonBenet was found, she was in all white with a star on her shirt. All white, top and bottom, long johns and a top and long sleeve shirt. That's what I thought. I thought that's actually what she was wearing the night prior. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat. But I thought she was wearing what she was wearing the night before, because I think according to the interviews, Patsy was saying that she went looking for something pink, but then couldn't find it, so ended up choosing something else, like something white, or I think just leaving JonBenet in the same thing that she had worn that night. So when we go and look in the records, and you kind of ask what they were wearing, and based on the sources, and we have a lot of sources here. We have the 97 interview from John and Patsy. We have the 98 interviews. We have 2000 interviews, 2001 depositions, the forensics, some of the police reports, the books from John and Patsy, 98 interview from John, 98 interview from Patsy, some of the search warrants kind of merged together, the autopsy report, and some information on the wood shards and some of the court documents that they had as well. And so, according to the information we pull up, Patsy said that she wore a white shirt, and Patsy said she was sound asleep. I think St. Steve Thomas, that is. This is in 1997, April 1997 interview, Boulder Police Department transcript. Steve Thomas said, okay. Patsy Ramsey said he carried her and put her in bed, and I got her, pulled off everything and I left the shirt on and pants on. Steve Thomas says, and remind me, what shirt did she go to bed in? Was that the same shirt that she wore to the Whites that night? Patsy Ramsey says, yes. And Steve Thomas says, the red, and Patsy says, no, it was white. Steve Thomas says, okay. Then those little sort of thermal bottoms, right? Patsy says, right. And he kind of goes into, is that right? And that was your good night routine with JonBenet in her room that night. Obviously, the thermal bottoms, as we said, from the 97 interview. John Ramsey comes in and says he recalls laying her down the bed. She still had the same shirt on. And this is coming from the 1998 interview with John. He's talking to Lou Smith. And Lou says, the night you put her to bed, do you remember anything about a Barbie nightgown? John Ramsey says, when I put her to bed, when I laid her down in the bed, she had on what she had worn to the Whites. She had on the same shirt on when I found her. Lou Smith says, what I'm trying to say, John, is where would the Barbie nightgown have been? Lou Smith getting a little annoyed, man. What I'm trying to say, John, is where would that nightgown where would that have been? John Ramsey says it would have either been in her bathroom drawer, confirmation, same thing Patsy said, which was where a lot of them were kept. Lou Smith says under the sink. And John says by the sink, I believe. Could have been on the floor, or it would have been in the washing machine. That's probably three places it would have been. Lou Smith kind of shows him a photograph and finds it in the wine cellar. And he says, I'd like to show you a photograph here in the wine cellar. Take a look at this. It's difficult. Tell us what you see. So, well, it's looking like in the room from the door, I see the blanket looks like the one that was around here. There's something pink. I think it's the nightgown. Lou said, that's what I was going to inquire about. That's the pink one. And John says, looks like shinier material than I remember. Looks more like what I kind of remember was on the Barbie doll itself. That one does. And Lou Smith says that one does. So anyways, John remembers that she was wearing what she was wearing to the Whites. That confirms what he was saying to Patsy. Same thing. Let me dig a little deeper. Said white tights or something. John Ramsey, no. And this is the 98 interview. Mike Cain says, yes. John Ramsey says, I remember when she had on the top she had worn to bed that she had worn when I laid her down. Her lower body was clothed, but I don't remember. Seems like it was a white pull-up. Mike Cain clarifies, like long john type. John says, like long johns. Right. Mike Cain says, not pajamas. John Ramsey says, no. Mike Cain says, think about that. And John Ramsey says, no, they were like white tights or something. And I remember she looked normally dressed. Mike Cain says, was she, what long johns are. So anyways, yeah. And then obviously Linda Arndt, from what we can see from the search warrants, Linda Arndt says JonBenet was dressed in a light-colored long-sleeve turtleneck, light-colored pants similar to pajama bottoms. John Ramsey placed her on the floor, identified on the floor inside the front door. The girl was identified by John Ramsey as being JonBenet. She was not breathing. Body was cool to the touch. So we have three people confirming this. So John is kind of mentioning that he doesn't remember here what it was. But we know, according to what you're saying, that you knew at the time. He's allowed to forget whatever.
By 10 o'clock, JonBenet was in her bed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what time did you guys go to
Yeah.
bed? And Burke too?
It'd been shortly after that, probably 10:30, I guess. Yeah.
And your son too?
I'm sorry. Johnny. Johnny. What time did John Ramsey say that he went to bed? So y'all know what I'm doing. I'm not finagling anything. So you know, this is all over the place. So this is what they found in sources. Based on the sources, John Ramsey gives a few time frames for when he went to bed the night of December 25th, 96. He stated that after getting Burke to bed, which he did probably between 9:30 and 10. Well, wait. You said you got home at 9:30. You said you got home at 9:30. How if you got home at 9:30 and you put JonBenet to bed and you stayed up for 10 to 20 minutes with Burke, did Burke get into bed at 9:30? Would have been closer to 10. I'll take that. And then I got Burke into bed, which he probably did between 9:30 and 10 to 10, probably a quarter to 10, maybe 9:45. He went right upstairs to bed. One interview, and this is coming from the 97 interview. Aha, closer to the time. Come on, talk to me. Now, he said the police recorded that he said they got home at 10 o'clock. Keep that in mind. I should probably put the police reports in here. I should do that. But anyways, in one interview, he asked, when asked what time he retired to bed and fell asleep, he said he thought the lights were out about 10:30 p.m., 10:40 p.m. And this is coming from 97 again. You bet. Steve Thomas says, John, and that question was, I think you said about 10:30, 10:40 that you retired to bed. John said, I think the lights were out about 10:30, 10:40 p.m. Yeah. So you put Burke 9:30, 10 o'clock, and then I'm assuming you do your nighttime routine. Detective says 22:30. John told her he went to bed about 22:30. Patsy recalls going to bed probably 9:30, 10 or something like that, perhaps 10:30. She stated John came to bed shortly after she did. So she got there 10, 10:30, 10-ish in that range. In a separate interview describing his routine after getting Burke on his way to bed around 9:15. That's the one that we had trouble with, the 9:15. When they got home, John said he got ready for, this is what I was looking for. He got ready for bed, brushed his teeth, probably took a melatonin. He might have read for a few minutes, estimated this was probably 10-ish or something in that range. And this is coming from the 1998 interview. And so this is where John is saying, Lou Smith says, and what is your routine then? She says, and John says, oh, I just got ready for bed. I brushed my teeth probably. I did take a melatonin that night. Lou Smith says, where do you keep that? John says, oh, in my medicine or in my sink or in the drawer, because I wanted to get sleep right away, to sleep well, because I knew I had to get up the next morning early. Again, he's telling us information we didn't ask. We didn't ask for that. I didn't ask why you kept your melatonin there. I'm asking you, where do you keep it? I want to get sleep. I'm sorry. I want to get sleep right away. Because I had to get up the next morning early, and I might have read for a few minutes. I think I did. It was probably 10-ish or something in that range. 10-ish. Now, something in that range. See, so we have a lot of, because we can 10-ish or something in that range with JonBenet's death, right? We can say 11-ish, something in that range. And what does that mean? Because this is pretty late. This is pretty late to be going to bed. You know what I mean? You're pushing, because we estimated, based on John finding JonBenet at about 1:05, if you take rigor mortis in full effect for 12 hours, we date it back and we say, okay, about 1 p.m. or I'm sorry, about 1 a.m. in the morning, JonBenet may have died. And you also have to consider the liver mortis that I think takes like 2 to 6 hours. If I'm remembering correctly, I can't remember so much about the liver mortis, but I think I remember more about the rigor mortis than the liver mortis. And the liver mortis was based on the fact that the blood had pooled to her back and stuck and stayed there. And when you bring her up, the way he brought her up the stairs, and he was basically what Linda Arndt was saying is that I can see the pooled blood in her back. That is so sick. I can see the pooled blood in her back not moving, which lets me know. I think Harmer, I think Detective Harmer may have said that. But anyways, I could see the liver mortis on her back. And so when John brought her up, meaning that she had been laying wherever she was, she had been dead so long that she hadn't moved. And so what we had estimated was, especially if the pineapple was in her stomach, maybe for 30 to 40 minutes, and it took 30 to 40 minutes for the pineapple to get through her stomach with all the acidity and stuff like that. This is just an estimate. And then to get to the upper intestine. So she had been up at least for 40 minutes. And Burke said he got up after his dad. So Linda Arndt saying that John said he went to bed about 10:30. So now it's starting to line up a little bit more. See, you can't remember everything, but then you start telling on yourself and stuff like that. So got Burke to bed about 9:30, 10, probably a quarter to 10. He said he went right upstairs and went to bed, and that's in 1997. And then in 1997, Steve Thomas says, okay, let's get a timeline on that, because you said Burke went to bed at 9:30, about 10. And then you said about, or probably about a quarter to 10, 9:45. And so you're saying to me, if I remember correctly, I think quarter to 10 is 9:45. You know, I haven't used that term in such a long time. But anyways, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. But 9:45, quarter to 10. So 9:30, 9:45, 10 o'clock. Then you go up, you put Burke down 9:30, 9:45, 10. It's really weird. But anyways. Well, no, if you put JonBenet to bed at 9:15, put JonBenet to bed at 9:15 and you got down with Burke at 9:30 for 10 minutes, okay, you put JonBenet to bed at 9:15 and you walk down and play with Burke for about 10 minutes. So that'd be 9:25 or 9:35. Probably takes you about 5 minutes to get up the stairs. That's about 9:40. So probably between 9:30 and 10. I can get you at 9:45. I can get you at the quarter to 10. And then you went upstairs and did your nighttime routine. Lights out about 10:30. So you're taking it 10:30, 10:40 is what we're confirming here, which aligns very well with Linda Arndt saying you got to bed at about 10:30. Aha. So I need that. And that's what you said at the closest time, closest to 1997. But then you come back in 1998 and you shift it up and you say 10-ish. You say about 10 o'clock is when you shift it up. So even though Ron Walker was saying that, you know, you need to get the Ramseys, even though there's trauma, Ron Walker was saying you need to get them in to get as much fresh information as you can. And the freshest information that we had in 1997 was that John went to bed, even though this was 4 months afterwards. John said, I went to bed at about 10:30, 10:40. But now, I'm sorry for talking so long, but this is crazy. But now he's telling us a year later, in June of 1998, about a year and some change later, that he went to bed at 10 o'clock. That drastically shifts up when Burke goes to bed, because now Burke has to go to bed at about 9:15, and you now have to get home at 9:15 or before 9:15. And get all that stuff ready. So now that makes sense, because I was wondering about that. But if you go with what you said in 1997, then it matches up that you went to bed about 10:30. So that's consistent what you told Steve Thomas with what you told Linda Arndt at about 10:30. See, man, I'm telling you right now. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you said Burke came back and got you and said, okay, if you went to bed at 10:30, 10:40, that's almost 11 p.m. Burke said he waited till you went to bed and got up after parents went to bed. Now, what Patsy tells us in these same interviews is that John snores and the kids don't bother him. He don't hear the kids. Patsy said, I hear Burke when he gets up and goes to the restroom in the interviews. And I'm not going to show that for time's sake. But Patsy says, I can hear him when he gets up and goes to the restroom. So Patsy may know the kids get up. Like we talked about this before, so I'm not going to belabor the point. So Patsy knows it, though. John is not aware, okay? But if Burke gets up after 10:30, 10:40, then that puts him up, because we originally thought it was closer to 10 and we tracked off of that. But if Burke gets up like 10, maybe 11, he waits till John goes to sleep, and John says, because if we assume that John reading makes sense, and he read for a few minutes, he lay down in bed, he read for a few minutes. Now, mind you, his bed is right by the alarm, and he didn't press the alarm, but he made sure the rest of the house was locked up. Just throw that little tidbit in there for you. But if John is asleep within 10 minutes, he's so tired he's asleep within 10 minutes because he's had a full day. Burke is hearing his dad snore. He knows his dad is asleep when his dad is snoring. He's hearing his dad snore at about 10:40, 11 o'clock, because we'll allow for like that 10-minute time frame for John to get to sleep at 10:30. Then that would be 10:40. Or if we allow for the time frame, John got to sleep at 10:40, you say about 11. About 11, Burke got up. And we're estimating that JonBenet was murdered about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, based on the rigor mortis, and the pineapple moving from the stomach. It was almost out of the stomach. There was some small little mucus left in the stomach, but it was mostly in the upper intestine now. And so if that took about 30, 40 minutes, Burke gets up at about 11. JonBenet somehow gets up, possibly around that time. Burke is downstairs making himself something to eat, or somebody did, whether it was, he and Patsy making themselves something to eat. JonBenet comes down there with the pillow, whatever she does, sets it on the kitchen counter and goes and gets something to eat. And Patsy probably let him play around, if that's the case. If she was down there, she probably let him play around while she was packing, because she was trying to pack in the middle of the day. I think she said in the interview. And so if that's the case, and JonBenet ate a little bit of pineapple at around 11:10. If you take me 11:10, 30 to 40 minutes afterwards is going to push me closer to 12 when things get crazy. And it happens actually quite fast then. JonBenet is yanked around and with the this and that, and because you can choke somebody in an instant. I think that you can do that in an instant. So 12:15, 12:30, depending on when the roughhousing may have started. That the timeline, the window is getting tighter and tighter for the outside perpetrator then. Because if they're pushing up against 5:30, Patsy gets up at 5:30, and the perpetrator has to have killed JonBenet already and escaped the house, or at least have killed JonBenet and wrote the note. Took 30 minutes to write the note. So we pushed back when we said the perpetrator had to do all the stuff. The perpetrator had to write the note. And we did this analysis on another video. The perpetrator had to write the note. That it said that took about 30 minutes because they started a couple times. I say 45 minutes. So they had to write the note because they tried a couple ways, then finally landed on directing to John. So that probably took 30 minutes. So from 5:30 prior, that's about 5 o'clock at least, is the final thing. Ran around and found a place to put the pins, and then escape out the window. Probably took like 5 minutes. So 5 minutes prior, You're moving me back to 4:55 a.m. and to go around and make the garrote probably took you 10, 15 minutes because you grabbed something from the house and you grabbed because you found something in John Andrews' room, I guess. I don't know what you brought with you, but you also found Patsy's paintbrush and broke that and used it to go around. So that probably took you, I'd say, and it was singed. So you had some sort of lighter with you to singe the rope, to burn it, from what I understand, to burn it to make sure it's stuck. Um, if I remember reading it through the search warrants in the forensic files correctly, it was singed on. So basically, yeah, I think so, or that was the autopsy report. But anyways, um, um, so that probably would have taken you 30 minutes as well. So you're moving me from 4:55 back to what, 4:25? Moving me back to 4:25. Um, and we say this whole thing with JonBenet probably took about 30 minutes to really get into it with the abuse. And, we'll say about 20, 30 minutes with JonBenet to get into the abuse and everything. So we're at 4:25 right now. You're moving me back to 4:15:05, 3:55 a.m. JonBenet sits down and eats some pineapple. Um, JonBenet sits and eats some pineapple for about, or she took a few chunks and didn't get to finish the rest because maybe there wasn't time. I don't know why you would make a kid pineapple. You don't have time. So she worked. So that's probably about 10 minutes to make, or 20 minutes. I'll say about 20 minutes to make it, and then let her eat for a few minutes and then say, let's go. So I'm sitting at 3:55, moving me back to 3:35. Took 40 minutes for it to digest through. I'll say 40 minutes for it to digest through. So I'm at 3:35 and you take me to 25:15:05, 2:55. So you're taking me back down to 2:55 a.m. So I'm saying this person had to start the assault at least by 2:55. So I'll write that in my notes. The person had to start the assault at least by 2:55 a.m., but probably before because of rigor mortis. But probably before due to rigor mortis timeline. All right.
He went to bed immediately when we got home.
Yeah, he's also a little guy. It's not like you have a teenager at that point who likes to stay up late.
Oh, he was
10-year-olds.
9 years old.
They go to bed.
Worn out from Christmas Day as well.
Okay. So everybody goes to bed by 10:30. And you like in our house, before we go to sleep, we lock all the doors, make sure that
Christmas Day as well.
Okay. So everybody goes to bed so Patsy puts her in bed. So probably by 10 o'clock, JonBenet was in her bed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And what time did you guys go to bed? And Burke too?
It'd been shortly after that, probably 10:30, I guess. Yeah.
And your son too?
Yes. Yeah. He went to bed immediately when we got home.
Yeah. He's also a little guy. It's not like you have a teenager at that point who likes to stay up late.
Oh, he was
10-year-olds.
9 years old.
They go to bed.
Worn out from Christmas Day as well.
I'm not going to look it up. But y'all already know, if you follow my investigation, I'm not going to look it up. You already know that is contradicting to what John Ramsey has said before. John has stated before in his book, in one of the books, like I said, I'm not going to look it up, but he stated before that, well, I think he stated in interviews as well, that he stayed up with Burke a little bit. And I think in the interviews, he said between 10 and 20 minutes. So they did not go to bed immediately. Burke did not go to bed immediately. That is contradictory to what he said before.
Well,
Okay. So everybody goes to bed by 10:30, and you like in our house, before we go to sleep, we lock all the doors, make sure the security's on, all that stuff. Did you have any of that on your house?
we had an alarm system that was in the house when we bought it, and it was the type that at that time the theory was you scare everybody out of the house, including the intruder. It was just this horrible loud noise, but we didn't use it. It went off once. JonBenet, about dinner time, I don't know, 6 months or 8 months before, was playing. We didn't know it, but she was punching the buttons on the alarm system, and this horrible. We had an alarm system that was in the house when we bought it, and it was the type that at that time the theory was you scare everybody out of the house, including the intruder. It was just this horrible loud noise.
I'm confused by the statement, the theory was.
And but we didn't use it. It went off once. JonBenet, about dinner time, I don't know, 6 months or 8 months before, was playing. We didn't know it, but she was punching the buttons on the alarm system, and this horrible sound came up, and I ran into where the control box was, and JonBenet looking at me like, said, "This makes my ears loud." So. But
we've all been there. Those security systems can definitely be more annoying than they ought to be when they go off.
They go off when you don't want them to. In this case, this would have given you a heart attack if it went off.
So what about what else was there? Were there locks on the doors or the windows? What was the security setup?
It was an old house built in 1927. Yes, there were locks on the doors, and just typical window locks, but I didn't check them that night, and that's to my deep regret. We were tired, and we always assumed Boulder was kind of a Ozzie and Harriet, flowers coming up, quiet, safe place, and so you get complacent, and I regretfully admit we are complacent.
No, I know it. I mean, I grew up in upstate New York. We never locked our doors, ever. We go away for vacation for a week and not even lock the door. And there was never an incident.
It's, I've told people, I said, just be aware there are bad people everywhere. Not just because you live in a nice neighborhood or don't live in South LA.
I don't know what part of upstate New York you lived in. Because they were certainly robbing people where I was. Whatever. Anyways, I stopped it because he said he didn't lock the doors and the windows. Okay, so I just went and looked it up. Basically, did John Ramsey lock the doors and the windows before he went to bed the night Christmas? And so based on the sources we have regarding the doors and windows being locked before John Ramsey went to bed, here's what they have. John Ramsey initially stated to Sergeant Whitson that he was sure the doors were locked when he went to bed that night. Got a couple sources there. He also stated to Detective Linda on the morning saying, "I don't know how they got in. The doors are locked." So the first source, police report, one of the police reports, briefly spoke with John Ramsey, asked Mr. Ramsey if he was sure the doors were locked when he got up. Mr. Ramsey said he was sure the doors were locked when he got up and when he went to bed the night before. I asked Mr. Ramsey for a sample of his and his wife's handwriting. Just as a standard procedure, Mr. Ramsey gave 2 notepads, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. So he's telling people the doors were locked. He goes on to say in the supplemental police report, so this is, a different police report. No, I think it's the same one. Yeah, same one. Sorry. Same thing. Looking at this police report, looking at one of the search warrants, December 29th of 96, affiant talked to Sergeant Bob Whitson, Boulder Police Department. Sergeant Whitson told your affiant that he responded to the house, and Sergeant Whitson said when he arrived, he entered through the rear exterior kitchen door. That's the butler's pantry. He told it as he entered the residence, he saw it appeared to be a pry mark on the door jamb of this door. I can't remember. Is it 9:30? 9:30. Oh, that's a little suspicious. Okay. Yeah. Anyways, he said 9:30. Okay. He told marks he observed was on the exterior of the house near the doorknob of the lock, blah, blah, blah. Damage appeared to have been less weathered than the surrounding surfaces on the door. Sergeant Whitson told blah, blah, blah. He spoke with John Ramsey, who identified himself as the owner. And John stated that all the doors to the residence were locked when he and his family went to bed on the previous evening. I cannot remember when John Ramsey. Okay, let me finish. Sergeant Whitson told your affiant that John Ramsey told him that the doors were still locked in the morning when they discovered the child was missing. When they discovered the child was missing, Detective Linda Arndt told your affiant that John Ramsey stated that his daughter, 6 years old, they last saw her approximately at 2200 hours. I need to double check this time because he got there at 9:30 in the morning and he saw a pry mark on the door, on the exterior of the kitchen door. He saw a pry mark. But anyways, I need to double check that. Some more of the search warrant. Been less weather than the surrounding surfaces on the door. Okay. And then asking about the confusion, 1998. John Ramsey says, well, one of the things that perplexed me is how did this person get in? When Linda was there, I used to say, I don't know how they got in. The doors are locked. Well, these guys said, did you check all the doors? I said, yeah. Well, did you check all the doors? Well, no, I didn't. So Patsy comes and says, she stated that the door for the coat room, that's the mud room, leading out to the garage was definitely kept unlocked. John confirmed that the door was always left unlocked as it was a primary entry point when using the garage opener. He mentioned the garage area itself was always secure from the outside. So, dang, I closed it. Okay, so he's talking about they left this door open. This is the coat room, mud room. And he left this room open, or this door open. Now, the door that they're talking about is secure is this door right here. Here is the garage door. So they left this door, locked. Use the garage opener to pull through here, and pull in. And then obviously you need to leave this door unlocked so people can get in the house. That makes sense. I get that. But the thing about it is that there was an alarm system right here. So that makes sense. That's pretty consistent. So yeah, Patsy also stated, and they say this in the 1998 interview. Supplemental reports for the police reports. Cloakroom or whatever. When I asked John about the doors being locked, John Ramsey told me the doors leading to the garage and to the house always left unlocked. Okay, cool. Confirms that. And then he kind of said the same thing in the 98 interview. John says, right. Do you normally have the garage opener? John says, in my car. See, I have a garage opener. I can get in the house because we never lock the door in the garage that goes into the house. And that was 98% of the time how I got in the house. And you know what's funny about this is that John said he got locked out one summer. He said he got locked out one summer and he couldn't get in the house. And Burke was with him, apparently. And they said that he got locked out of the house, but I guess the thing that's confusing me is that, but you have the garage opener. You have the garage door opener. Unless you're saying that Patsy, that 2% of the time, locked that garage door in going into the house. So basically what you're telling me is that 2% of the time, Patsy or somebody locked this door. So you could get in through the garage opener, but Patsy locked this door. Okay, stay with me. So Patsy also stated that a window in front of the house where she ran the Christmas lights was unlocked. Okay. And this was in 98. And a window in the rear where John could enter if locked out was open. And she's talking about, so she describes this from her 98 interview. Now, this is the 98 interview. This is not the 97 interview where we immediately learned about this. This is in 1998. And my concern with this in 1998 is that you've had a little bit of time to get your story together, but I won't assume that here for now. Where I would run my Christmas lights so that the window was unlocked. And then this window in the rear of the house where John could come in if he was locked out under the grate kind of thing that was open. If someone wanted in, they could get in. The window in the front, does it have bars? Patsy says it does have bars on it. Okay, so that's an irrelevant statement. I mean, were those fastened so that, and Patsy says, I just can't remember. I don't really know. But all I know is it wasn't tightened and secure like you might. And Tripp said the window itself. Patsy says, right. Tripp says, because it would have a hole in it. And Patsy said, the wires. Tripp says, but you don't know anything about the bars being loose or removed or anything like that. Patsy says, no, I can't remember. And Tripp says, but you don't know anything about the bars being loose or removed. Patsy says, no, I can't remember. Tripp says, okay. Thomas Haney jumps in. Anything else? Patsy says, not really. Thomas says, did John ever explain to you the position and the way JonBenet's body was wrapped in the blanket, covered? Patsy says, no, I believe. No, he didn't. When he found her, you mean? Thomas says, correct. Patsy says, no. Thomas says, did you ever inquire about that? Patsy says, no, just too hard. Thomas says, on your last visit to Bethesda in March, who accompanied you then? Patsy says, let's see. Thomas said, I think you said yesterday, March this year was your, Patsy says, right. I think went by myself. And I think I met Pat Burke there. No, I didn't meet Pat. Did I? Yes. Thomas says, what was yours? So in 1998, Patsy is saying that, she's actually saying, so you can see it, so you understand, here's the breakfast room, but this is where under here, this is where the person is supposed to get out. Now, I don't know what Christmas lights, if she's talking about right here, and there were burglar bars right here, or whatever, but I don't remember there being bars on this window. Maybe there was. I don't remember seeing them. But anyways, she's saying that there are bars right here. But that's no problem, because if you let the windows up, then you just, put the extension cord out. Nobody's going to get through that. So that's irrelevant. So you go down. So that's what I'm saying. You go down. I don't know why you even mentioned that, because that's not relevant. Nobody can get in there. But anyways, whatever. What you're talking about is the room under here. If we go look at the basement, this is where we're talking about. This is the storage room, the hobby room and storage room where this window was broken. And Patsy just said, and I'm confused, because John said he broke the window. Now we're having all this conversation, and I'll end it right here. We're having all this conversation about John having to break the window. So John has several ways to get in the house. He has the garage door opener that he uses most of the time, but somehow we're supposed to assume that the when he got locked out, that means that somebody locked the garage door from the inside. Okay. And Patsy wasn't home. I think he said she was off doing something else, couldn't come. Now, what's weird to me is that would mean that Patsy would, if John says he got locked out, then that means that somebody from the inside locked the door because your car is in the garage. So somebody from the inside had to lock the door. That means Patsy had to lock the door and go out of the front door. Either that or they locked the door from the inside and closed it. And closed it as they went into the garage. That does not make sense. Because Patsy would have had to lock the door behind you from the inside and then go out the front door, come around to the garage, open the garage, and back her Jaguar out. Because John is taking the Jeep. So Patsy would have had to go around and back the Jaguar out, use the garage. Well, she could have, well, yeah, that door is locked. The garage door is locked. So basically what I'm talking about, so we're not being confused, is Patsy would have had to lock this door from the inside and then go through here. I'm sorry, this is the butler's kitchen, but Patsy would have had to go do one or two things. She would have had to lock this door from the inside, go through here, the butler's kitchen out the back, and come around here and open the garage door to get her car out. Or go around here, leave this door open, which they said was locked all the time. This door was always locked and secure. She would have to go through here and get in and get her car and then back out. Or she would have had to lock the door here, then go all the way through here, go out the front door, then travel all the way to the back and go through here, get in the car and back out, unless she parked in the front, which I see no indication of that. John didn't mention that, but that seems highly unlikely. So somebody would have had to lock this and then go out the front, and that probably would have been Patsy. But John is saying, and what's really weird is that you have a method of access to the house. You leave this open because my aunt does this. You've been doing this for years. You leave this open so that you can and this is closed. Absolutely. This is always locked. You leave this open so you can get through here and then come straight through. But what Patsy is saying, and this might be a sort of like a I don't want to frame it like that. Anyways, they might be altering the truth slightly, because Patsy is saying that and the window in the rear was left open where John could enter if he was locked out. So where I run my Christmas lights and the rear of the house where John could come in if he was locked out under the grate kind of thing, open if someone wanted in, they could come in. And Patsy somewhere starts to go into, and he says in the dressing area, the window in the dressing area, he talks about, he starts talking about the window above their bed on the third floor, or the window by there. He's talking about this window. He's talking about this window right here, or something like either this window or this window. That's on the third floor, man. Nobody's coming up there, man. Get real. What they're talking about. But anyways, in initial interviews indicated that neither John nor Patsy heard or noticed any unusual notices. There were also reports of no signs of forced entry in the search warrant. and John did check to make sure that everything was good. So I guess I'm confused because if Patsy is saying that she left the door open, where am I here? She left it open, or she left this window open. Which is under here. She left that open so John could get in just in case he was locked out. But if you left it open for John to get in just in case he was locked out, then why was it broken? If we have an established agreement saying that we're going to leave this open just in case I get locked out, why would you need to break it? Number one. Number two, that might tell you if the window was never fixed. You said you never got it fixed, but that might tell you why you never got it fixed, because that was your way to get in the house just in case you got locked out. So everybody agreed that this window is going to stay open just in case John gets locked out. So it almost seems like if that's the case, that the window didn't need to be broken because you left it open so John could get in. So I'm fuzzy on why you would have needed to break it. All right. Anyways, that's the analysis. We'll jump back on Megyn Kelly later. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. And until next time, take it easy.